in like elementary school, I had struggles. I was picked on for my speech impediment and a few other things, and my learning disability, which again, I fortunately wasn't labeled as that. So, I had struggles. It created some traumas, but as you alluded to earlier, it also allowed me to develop grit or perseverance. And I remember, I think I was in like sixth grade. I was getting picked on one afternoon, getting off the bus, and I got pissed. And I took a swing and broke the kid's nose. And I realized I could defend myself, and did that to a couple other kids, and they stopped picking on me. So looking back, I think that was good. I mean, because a lot of guys get picked on for different reasons, but not everyone learned that they can fight. Even if you lose, it's not that you win, it's that you can take care of yourself. So that was a good thing. I think, I don't live in South Africa, but I certainly live in this country and worked with guys all over the world, and particularly the Western countries. And I think in this general culture, there's a lot of confusion around emotionality. And there's a couple of ways to unpack it. One way is that, certainly in this country, what's happened is we don't have a model of what it is to be emotional as a man. The model we have is really a feminine model. And that's because, we all grew up in tribes. So we all, in tribes, it was much more natural. There was a balance. Men, women, were in the whole tribe were raising everyone. And so the kids, had their parents, they had their extended family, they had the community, they had, it was pretty equally divided. Well, when we left the tribe 10,000 years ago and we went to the farm, it shifted a little, but when 250 years ago, when we left the farm for the factory, it really shifted because guys left home. So women had to step up, and they did. And they were, the mothers ended up being the mothers and fathers. They were the teachers. They were the nurses, the therapists. So over several generations, boys and men just inherited a more feminine model of emotionality. And so that makes it hard for men to be emotional, and for a few reasons. And then when we put men together in a group where it's just men, and they feel safe, and we know how to make them feel safe, and we maybe give them very little training or a suggestion or a prompt, they will get vulnerable, they will get emotional, they will, where they might shame a guy for being vulnerable in this situation, inevitably, in all these years I've done it, thousands and thousands of hours, tens of thousands of hours in groups and trainings. I've never heard a guy shame another man. And so it's a different situation. And this is a situation that all men want and need. And once they get in a situation where they feel emotionally safe and they open up and they become vulnerable, they start teaching each other what it is to be emotional as a man. And men can only teach men. Women have done a great job. They can take us so far, but they can't take us the last bit. And we need men to do that. And I know that works because women come back and tell me, their therapists, their wives, girlfriends, mothers, when guys go through our programs and they find their own way to be emotional, they are connecting with women in a much more powerful way.
It's something that you just said, that you said that women can only take us so far. And I agree with you in terms of that. And also, as you mentioned earlier, that not only I would say in America, but all over the world, actually, let me compare South Africa. Let me talk about places that I would say I see via social media, and also have my own experience. I've seen the fact that nowadays women define what is a man and what a man should do and what a man shouldn't do. And it goes back to that thing of not realizing what it's masculinity, because it's seen as this thing that it's very toxic. It's something that is not seen as women are very against, and they don't want to see a man. They don't want to be with a man that is masculine, because it's seen as, no, we follow people like Andrew Tate, to follow people that really push the agenda of be a man and don't listen to a woman. And in terms of emotions, I have seen also within myself that it's hard to show that emotion when I am in a specific place. And whenever I'm with actually my peers, my friends, people that I actually trust, I have this thing of being open, being vulnerable, being me, of saying, no, I'm going through this. And something that you really mentioned that was very powerful in terms of men, when they are in a safe space, they don't laugh at each other in a way. And another thing that I wanted to touch on is the fact that men of using humor as some sense of coping mechanism. And I myself have been doing it for, I would say now, years of trying by any means to just hide that pain in terms of, okay, I'm going through this. And if I speak to a person, with a woman, probably she will laugh at me. And something that I have learned from, in terms of, I don't want to lie, as a man, as I mentioned earlier, that there's stigma around men, in terms of there's the stigma also about crying. And I once cried, and to me it seemed like something that she didn't appreciate, something that really was not in line with her, what she it wasn't aligned with her in terms of what she got herself into. And one thing that I observed is the fact that she brought up later on within the relationship. And that's where I realized that when it comes to women will make, I would say, fun of your pain. I'm not saying that all women do that, but some of them do that. So it's quite a conversation that as individuals need to sit down and have, not only with ourselves, but as a community in general, as a society in general. So I just want to speak about the Sand Point Men's Group. So it started in 2015 and has grown. What was the initial motivation behind founding this group, and how has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, 20 years ago, I've been in groups for pretty much close to 30 years. I've been forming groups, and 20 years ago, I just saw that the traditional model of men's group and really men's work was limited, certainly for me, and I thought for other men. So I spent a weekend taking everything I learned and used in my clinical practice, and so I'm going to change the model and created a model for a new men's group because I just wanted real friends. It was selfish. And I asked 11 guys in this small town up in North Idaho near the Canadian border. And they all said yes. And it was like, oh, wow, I got to really show up. If they're showing up, I got to do something. And so I started developing things for this group. You know, it was for me and then it was for them. And it just kept on growing. And now going on 20 years, we've had over 400 guys through the group. We got probably 60 guys in the group, the community, and 5 groups. And I moved out of Idaho. I'm now in California, but I'm in a Zoom group for all the expats that, were in the live group. And so 5 groups, 60 guys in all these groups. It just keeps growing word of mouth. And then, I don't know, 15 years ago, I started getting requests to help other groups and then businesses, and one thing led to another. Formed a little business, formed a big business, and now formed MELD, which is Men's Emotional Leadership Development. And really, it was taking what I started to develop 20 years ago for that first group, and that group was really my beta testers or my incubator for a lot of stuff. And then my other businesses, further developed it. And so we've honed this whole process over 20 years of and really more from my clinical experience of what really works with men, and not from a theoretical perspective, but what works, how can you get the most change or the least input in the shortest period of time, and not just have it be sustainable, but generative. And by that, I mean, when you really learn something, you keep learning it after you leave school, because you learned it so well, and it's such a naturalistic thing that you learn. And so that's my goal. And we've done a pretty good job of, creating systems or courses and programs that fulfill that.
Mm-hmm. As I mentioned earlier when we started this episode, is the fact that I want to speak about these things, and I think we had covered the most of it. And you co-founded MELD, and let's get into that. So can you explain the core principle behind MELD and how it addresses the unique challenges men face today?
Yeah. So everything we do is science-based. So it's based on research that's been, at least for 50 years, and in two primary areas: in attachment theory, which started with John Bowlby and then went into couples with Sue Johnson, which basically says we're hardwired for connection, and that's what a lot of what we use in the peer-to-peer groups and all the interactions that guys have with other guys. And then the other part is what I call the soma-aware, or the emotional physiology, which is based on the work of particularly Stephen Porges, which we were doing before I really knew his work, which is the science of stress, and what he calls the polyvagal theory, which is really how that vagus nerve and consequently the whole body deals with or doesn't deal with stress. And then with Peter Levine and, the therapies he developed around that. So those two approaches, have a lot of science and a lot of therapy based on those principles or the research which we've used. And then there's been research done on our programs that show the effectiveness of it. And then, as I said earlier, it's based on the body, the orientation to the body. And then it's also based on going to the cause of the situation. And with that, most approaches today are top down. And by that, I mean more cognitive, analytical, intellectual. And it's a place for it. It's like we have this sort of Cartesian belief that if we understand something, that we can fix it. Mm-hmm. And that, if you're building a bridge, you need to really understand structural engineering and, how to build a bridge for it to work and last.
Yeah.
But understanding how to develop better relationships is not a cognitive process. Yeah, there's a cognitive aspect to it, but we get a lot of guys who have tried different cognitive approaches and it either didn't take them far enough, or it backfired on them because they learn these things and their life is not getting better, maybe worse, and they think it's them, and really it's a system, because what needs to change, if you're going to change, is your body and your emotions, and you got to start at that level, and that's a core, maybe the core principle of our work.
And as I was listening to you in terms of, you mentioned that it is science-based, and most things that I've seen in terms of therapy, in terms of in the field of medicine, in terms of that, in some way, there's a couple of times that the human factor is excluded, the compassion is excluded. How do you make sure that, as much as it's science-based when it comes to man instinct, when it comes to helping